Oh. सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधिता भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः ध्यान्तं न विदुसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। Okay, so we have seen verse number 11 and 12, and we have also seen in the last class an introduction to the Gita in general as to what is the central theme of Gita. This is very important because there are many commentaries about Gita that is available in the market, and obviously one of them is Gurudev's Gita as well. There are many Gitas which are based on the Advaita Vedanta. We have seen that. Yeah, many Advaita masters, they have commented on Gita because Gita is one of the central texts. It is a summary of all the Upanishads. So it's much easier to gain the knowledge of all the Upanishads if you read Gita. So it is a summary. But any summary like what we have seen will have certain limitations in terms of understanding unless it is properly exposed by a master. And why it is important that we follow one aspect or one text or one thought flow is very important in terms of gaining the knowledge correctly. So if you I- because Gita can be confusing. It starts with the highest knowledge. As I mentioned, Krishna did the central theme of Bhagavad Gita is the spiritual philosophical interpretation is uh, Gita. That's why it is one of the Shastra. It is one of the three pillars of Hinduism, what we say, because it interprets Gita in a philosophical way. However, at the same time, in order to manage Arjuna and his expectations out of Arjuna, Krishna does talk in terms of dharma and in terms of laukika, the worldly logic as well, because he wants him to fight. The only reason why Gita is in existence is because of the quality of the student that we have seen in terms of Arjuna. Arjuna is the one who has who had the uh, grace of uh, getting into contact with stalwarts of that generation, like Veda Vyasa, like Bhishma Pitamaha, Krupacharya, Sanjaya. You name it, there are so many people, and not to say the least, Krishna himself was his Sakha, his buddy. So obviously, we should not forget that he is son of Pandu. Pandu, we have seen in verse 11, when Bhagavan says, Panditaha nanu sochanti. Pandita means that particular person who has the knowledge. Knowledge about what? Knowledge about the very Gita that we are looking at. Knowledge about the self. The one who has the knowledge of self is the one who is referred to as Pandita. Krishna is the Pandita here, and the opposite of Pandita is Pamara. So we have Arjuna being defined as a Pamara because he is in Shoka Samvigna Manasaha. He is completely um, immersed in the sorrow. So why we have Gita is because Arjuna, despite being a Pamara, he is not someone who doesn't know dharma, he doesn't know logic, he doesn't have that problem is not there with Arjuna. Only thing is he has got his mind overtaken by moha, delusion. So a deluded mind, but at the same time a knowledgeable, intelligent mind is capable now of absorbing the subtler knowledge, subtler aspects of philosophy, and he is ready, ripe to receive the knowledge. And how do we know that? Because he recognizes Krishna as that guru, and so much so in many words, Karpanya dosho, apahat swabhavaha. In that verse, we have seen that he surrendered to Lord and he asked for the knowledge. He asked for the knowledge, telling that I am your sishya, I am your student, so please give me the knowledge. In so many words, he has already asked that. And that is the reason why we have Gita here in front of us. Otherwise, it's not possible for us to Krishna to teach. What Krishna maximum would have done if this background was not there, Krishna just would have advised him in terms of his duties in the society. Maybe telling that he is a Kshatriya, and Kshatriya there is no option but to fight. He would have advised him. And advice is such a thing where you will gain the knowledge for you to overcome the immediate problem in front of you. Whereas knowledge is something where a teaching, once it is given, a person need not come back to the guru or the person who is advising. So Krishna here is not advising. Neither Arjuna was looking for an advice. He was looking for a teaching, and Krishna knew what is required and is capable of giving the knowledge. So that's what has actually happened when it comes to the beginning of the Gita. So as I mentioned, the flow of thought is very important, and you will find that in Shankaracharya's exposition of Bhagavad Gita, he keeps on telling that at many places, wherever this philosophy and wherever the Sankhya Yoga type of a verses come, he says intellectually, what other option I have but to say that Gita only exposes Advaita Vedanta. So he says, I'm helpless. Krishna is so crystal clear in telling that Advaita is the only path. He keeps on telling that. And we will see whenever such a verse comes, we will definitely see that particular aspect. Yeah. So when a Sishya is ready to receive the knowledge and a Guru is ready to give the knowledge, what is the knowledge that any Guru can give to the Sishya who is ready? Once we see that, again, Shankaracharya and our many masters before him have come out with 4 different Mahavakyas as the truth that should be given, as the knowledge, as the jnanam that one should be given or hidden in the Upanishads, in the Vedas. So we have, I hope we all know 4 Mahavakyas. So we have in Yajurveda, telling that in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, if I'm correct, it says that Aham Brahmasmi. I am that Aham, that is the self. That self is the Brahma Asmi. That is the same as the Brahman. Aham and Brahman, they are not different, is the core message of Yajurveda. We have another Mahavakya called Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi comes in Chandogya Upanishad. Again, repeatedly the Guru in Chandogya keeps on telling his son Tattvamasi many times. And this comes in the Samaveda. In the Rig Veda, we have another Upanishad called Aitreya Upanishad. In Aitreya Upanishad, we have Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma, that knowledge is the Brahman. That knowledge is the Brahman, is how Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So Prajnanam Brahma is Rig Veda. And we have Atharvana Veda in Mandukya Upanishad. The Rishi there says, Ayam Atma Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma, I the Atman is none other than the Brahman. So every Upanishad we hear through these Mahavakyas, the central teaching of Upanishads is this Atman is that Brahman. Atman is what? A rough translation is self. Self is I, whatever I currently feel is I, must be that Brahman. So this Atma takes the center stage when it comes to our understandings, the core message, the central theme, whatever you call, of the Upanishads in every Veda. So Vedas divided into four different Vedas. So all four Vedas, Mahavakyas have been taken just as an example. In fact, every Upanishad, even the texts like Ramayana, will have that central theme of Ayam Atma Brahma. When Ravana was killed, Mandodari comes and she gives a kind of a lecture about the lacuna of Ravana, his qualities where it led to his death. She recognizes the Rama as that Vishnu, and she says that this Rama is none other than that Vishnu. So the theme comes again and again, recognition of the inner Atma as that Brahman comes to every person who comes in touch with the concept called Ishvara. Ishwaratvam, once you recognize that it is there, because it is hidden. Normally, our mind goes externally, the flow, and that is the ignorance that we are talking about. What is the ignorance? Ignorance of the self, knowledge about the self. Self-knowledge, we say, but knowledge about the self, ignorance of the knowledge about the self, the nature of the self, that is where we are actually lacking. That is what we normally talk about. So, Gita, Krishna keeps on talking, starting from verse 11 up to 25. The central teaching of Gita is there in terms of philosophy, you will find in these verses. And there are certain 6 or 7 aspects of the Atman, because Atma Jnana is lacking in Arjuna and all of us, and Krishna is trying to give that knowledge to all of us. Once we understand these 5 or 6 central teachings of what Atma is, very easy for us to understand Gita, especially Sankhya Yoga, supposed to be very, very difficult. Krishna starts with the highest knowledge. Yeah, like many other Upanishads also, you will find that Guru, when Sishya comes and asks, out of ignorance, ask for the knowledge, obviously knowledge has to be given at the highest level. But once the knowledge that is given to the people, main problem is that the grasp of this subtle knowledge may not happen and will not happen. So like Krishna, every guru then will have to explain that more in terms of the experiential worldly way. That is that becomes a important step as well. So we will find after giving this knowledge of the highest level, Krishna continues for 18 chapters because Arjuna keeps on asking questions. Every question, it will come, one more chapter is added till Arjuna says that nashto mohaha. So my delusion is gone. Thank you, Krishna. I know what to do. Then Gita stops. And again the war starts. So once we say that this is the Atma, problem is the knowledge about the Atma, we should understand the Atma, how Advaita Vedanta gives, because whole of our uncovering of Gita is in terms of this Advaita Vedanta. So what is this Atma as per the master of Advaita, Shankaracharya? So once we have seen that this is the requirement for me to understand, we need to understand the Atma. And brilliance of Shankaracharya is he brings in, while defining in Tattvabodha, the concept of Atma, he says he uses the very terms which are not Atma, not only which are not Atma, which I think at this current state as me. Atma is self. Self means what is, how do I define self? So every student the will think of himself in certain way. So you may think that is the people who are thinking I am this body, after hearing to so many lectures on Advaita philosophy, we may come to conclusions I am not this body very easily. But there are subtler aspects, subtler layers of you where you will get caught at some point or the other. So not only Shankaracharya in Tattvabodha defines you as the Atman, he also gives you the principle of that neti neti of what you are not. He defines Atma in terms of what you are not, and then comes out and gives a specific definition of Atma as well. And the advantage of that is this gives you the knowledge about sadhana, of how I can gain this knowledge, what I should do in terms of meditation. Meditation, we have seen in Upadesasara, even Ramana Maharshi talks about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga as many things, but he comes to Jnana Yoga. Similarly, here starts with Jnana Yoga. We Shankaracharya says that Stula Sukshma Karana Sharira Vyatiraktaha. So I am not this Stula Sharira, I am not this Sukshma Sharira, I am not this Karana Sharira. So I am not this gross body, I am not this subtle body, I am not this causal body. So he comes out with this, and we have seen the definitions of these three many times. So I will not go into that. And he then says, okay, you are not these three bodies. Very easy, maybe, to say that I am not this, I am not this. And we have already seen examples of such a this one. Then he says that I am not pancha kosha atitaha. Atitaha, it is other than the pancha koshas. Annamaya kosha, I am not. Pranamaya kosha, which is the senses, I am not. And manomaya kosha, I am not this mind, because I may think that I am the mind, because I may say I'm angry, I'm this, I attach myself with the definition, defining myself in terms of the emotions. He says I'm not that particular this one. Then he says I am not the vijnanamaya kosha, I am not the intellect, I am not the concepts that I think I am. And then he says I am not anandamaya kosha. So pancha kosha tita. And the third thing he says, avastatraya sakshi. So now, not only I am not this, but also I am the same one who is actually witnessing this principle of consciousness, that is witnessing. Because moment Shankaracharya brings a definition as a sakshi to the Atma, he is defining yourself as the, not only you are not the inert layers in terms of the three bodies, in terms of the five experiential levels with this world, I am actually the very witness of all this. The moment you say I am the witness, avastatraya sakshi. What are the avastatraya? It is the waking state, dream state, and the deep sleep state. I may think I am different because I change my body in my dream. I drop everything, including my ahankara, in my deep sleep. I may think that these three are different eyes that are existing at different experiential levels. What Shankaracharya says in defining Atma as Avastatraya Sakshi, it is the same I who witnesses all these three. Experientially, we know that because the memory of all the three remains with the whoever I define as I. But one thing that is pretty clear in these definitions, what Shankaracharya gives is, I am no longer the inert layers whom I attribute my definition of I. I am that consciousness principle, because Sakshi requires to be a conscious, sentient being. I cannot be the inert layer. So the moment I say I am a conscious being, Avastatraya Sakshi, um, the and not the inert being, we have seen the examples of last time I gave example of the moon and the moonlight. Yeah, certain principles have come into picture as to how that the consciousness can be defined. The consciousness, if it becomes a sakshi, it is not one with them, although I feel, I experience like that. How? Similar to the sunlight or the sun's radiation, which appears to be spread all over the body of the moon, appears to be one with it. However, little bit of analysis will let you know that that light of sun cannot be, it is not that light is not property of the moon. Yeah, it is not that it is falling on the moon, moon undergoes some change and becomes a property of the moon. It is not the property of a moon. Neither it is part of the moon. And we cannot even say it is product of the moon, that it has become a product of the moon. It is not the property, it is not the part, it is not the product. This is the first lesson we learn from that example that we are seeing. Now apply it to the consciousness. That consciousness principle, which is the witness of the three avasthas, is not part of my body. Body, when I say, extend it to body mind complex. It is not part of my body. It is not property of my body. It is not product of my body. But what I think, because science again and again tells you, consciousness somehow gets generated in the mind. When the mind starts working, consciousness automatically comes somehow. So, but what, with this example, what we are telling with the analysis, apply it, that consciousness principle which is there, it is neither the product of the body, it is not the part of the body, it is not the property of the body. So when you apply that, although my experience says that it is part of my body, it is a product of my body, body when I say the mind, and it is a product of my body, a property, if you see, it is none of them, is how the definition is being given by telling that it is avastatraya sakshi, and it is different. It is different from all the layers, inert layers, is how the Krishna is defining them. And once we understand this concept that it is not part of it, or it is not this one, we will know that the sun's radiation really is not limited to the only the moon. It extends much, much beyond. It is infinite in terms of moon when we see. That is the reason why when some other body comes into the view of our eyes, like any planet, for example, that also gets lighted up, that also gets illumined. So that's why we see the stars. Stars are all is completely inert objects without any self illumination. But the moment it comes into into purview, our radar, automatically they also gets lighted up. So again, apply it to the same consciousness principle. The moment we say that it is the case, it is the infinite, this one not limited. Although I am not able to see in the night with respect to the moon, everything else appears to be very, very dark. Only the moon shines. Similarly, consciousness is there everywhere, but wherever there is a antakarana, principle of antakarana, principle of body, it appears to be shining. Only for that particular moment, it appears to be shining. So the second aspect we have seen, it is not bound by the limitations of the inert layers. The consciousness principle is not bound by the limitations of the body. It extends well beyond the limitations of the body. The third one we have seen is that um, it provides sentiency to the body, as we see, but that sentiency is not kind of continuous. Sometimes the sentiency can be experienced in front of us. Sometimes it need not be experienced. Again, go back to the moon example. When the new moon comes, the sentiency is there. Theoretically, if we understand and analyze the principle, the light principle always was there, is there. However, because of certain aspects of the moon and our own limitations, the moon doesn't appear. So the sentiency doesn't appear to be there. The light principle is there everywhere. So it becomes avyakta, unmanifest state, but it is still there. And when the moon, even a small portion of it comes visible, it actually becomes visible. So the vyakta and avyakta, but it is always there. The principle of radiation is always there. So if you apply the similar principle to the consciousness, what it says is, when the body is there, when the physical body is there, the consciousness becomes vyakta. It manifests for our experiential purpose. But when the body disappears, when the body goes away, temporarily, it may be that it becomes avyakta. Doesn't mean that it is not there, only it is I am not able to experience that particular this one. So this Vyakta and Avyakta Chaitanyam is also an important principle that is there with this example. Yeah. So this principle of consciousness is called Atma, and the inert layers which get illumined because of this consciousness are the Anatma. So these are the technical terms that we come across in the text, Atma and Anatma. And what is Jiva? Jiva, what we are seeing is a mixture of this Atma and Anatma. One doubt will always come as to how can these two mix up? Can light mix with darkness, etc.? And that is the reason why masters like Shankara takes a lot of trouble in terms of explaining what is this Maya. Aghatita Ghatana Fatiyasi Maya. That which should not have happened seemingly has happened. That is what the Maya's capable is. That is the reason it is called as Ishvara's Maya is nothing but his power, is how the Maya is described. And that actually makes it more difficult for people to understand. That's why it is a very subtle knowledge which we require to really go into details as to what is this Atma and what is Anatma, and how they are appear to be mixed up as far as my body is concerned. Okay. So when we say that this Atma is not limited by the body, mind, conscious, it is infinite by nature. We come across these terms again and again, that infinity, that it is eternal. But when we talk about infinity, in mathematics, there can be many infinities. Yeah. For example, the number pi, 22/7. If you keep on solving that, math says that it is an infinite series. So one that doesn't have a end is infinity as far as mathematics. So is it something like that, that as I try to solve the Brahman is infinity, Ishvara is infinity. These terms when we use, it is as if I try to understand and this understanding continues again without any end. Is that type of infinity that we are looking at? Or it is like I am trying to see with most powerful of telescopes, and I am observing one body after the other in the space, and space seems to be going infinity. because there is so much so that theoretically now space, there is something called an observable space, because beyond that the light of speed is not sufficient. So I can never be able to see those things because it's an expanding universe. So there is an observable universe, and the space extends beyond. So I don't know how far it is. So space is infinite as far as my experience is concerned. Do we treat it that way? That Brahman is something which is, there is a limit, but I don't know how to see that limit. Is it that type of an infinite? What is this infinity that Vedanta talks? Vedanta is not talking of infinity like endless aspects. Uh, Unfortunately, we are limited by the language, so we use the word infinity. If you go back into Sanskrit, the term that we use is not infinity. The term that we use called ananta. Ananta is the term that describes. Ananta means there is no limit to the this particular concept, what I refer to as Brahman. When I say there is no limit, what type of limits are we talking about? So there is a specific definition that Shastras give of the Ananta. Ananta, one which does not have a limitation, what is defined as Desha Paricheda. Paricheda is limitation. Yeah. Desha Paricheda means Desha is space. There is no spatial limitation when we try to define the Atman or the Brahman, because Atma Brahma, they are one and the same. Already Mahavakyas have established that. So when we say it is not limited by the space, no spatial limitation, what does it mean? Because our experience of the world is that if I am located in Hyderabad now, automatically it means I am not located in Calgary. There is a limitation with respect to any object, with respect to the spatially. Spatially, I am a limited object, I am a limited being, I am a limited aspect which is there. So once we say that I am not limited in space, I am not limited in terms of my availability in the spatial context. Means what? I am available at the same time in Hyderabad, in India. I am also available in at the same time in Calgary. So there is no space where I am not there. Spatially, I seem to be everywhere. That is how the thinking have to be in terms of Ananta. So there is no limitation as far as the space is concerned. What does it mean? The term that we come across is called omnipresent. So there is no place, no in the space, there is no place in the space where the consciousness principle is unavailable. So it's omnipresent. So Ishvara becomes a omnipresent concept when it comes to when we say there is no limitation as far as the space is concerned. When it comes to second limitation, which is not there, yeah, it is called Kala Parichedaha. Means I am not limited by the time. Limitation of time is what? Normally we say that anything that is there in front of us in terms of we always come to a conclusion when it is born, and it will survive for some time and then it dies. We may take 100 years, other beings may take 12 years or 20 years or 100 years or 200 years, 300 years. If you go to the sum, maybe a billions of years, sun will be there, but once it is born, it will die. And that's why the scientists go into so much length as to when the Big Bang happened, when the universe came into being, and they say that universe is expanding at a rate at which after some time this expansion will take everything away and everything goes back to the Big Bang once again, possibly. They also don't know. Nobody knows as to what will happen to the universe. Some say that it will swing back, come to the point of singularity once again. No solutions to that. These are only theories that go about. But in general, what we are talking is anything that is born will die. So the aspect is every being is limited in terms of kala, in terms of the time. So kala paricheda. And when we say that ananta, the aspect of being is beyond the kala paricheda, beyond the limitations of the time, what is the conclusion? Immediate conclusion will be this particular aspect is eternal. The term which we use is called nitya. Nitya is eternal. Nitya can be some of them, like I mentioned, a mountain that is born, because the uh, scientists can actually exactly tell as to how long ago Himalaya started growing. With the estimates that are there, they will say that it started when the Indian continent came and hit the Asian continent, and then Himalayas started growing. So Himalayas are born, and once the earth goes away, once the sun goes away, earth is destroyed, this Himalayas also will go. So Himalayas are temporarily looking infinite compared to my life. But really speaking, all of them have got a Kala Paricheda, whereas Ananta, the Ananta means I don't have this Kala Paricheda. Ananta means not the Brahman, but I, the Atman, doesn't have any Kala limitation in terms of Kala, which makes me the real eternal Nitya. You will find Krishna defining Atma in these terms. That's why we are trying to understand what is this Ananta. Third one is, which is called Vastu Paricheda. Vastu Paricheda is a very interesting limitation that we will be reviewing. That means uh, Vastu Paricheda means an item, a thing is itself, and it is not anything other than itself. So I am different from zillion other things that I am seeing in terms of existing things in front of me. Not only in front of me, it's everything that is existing. So to say, I the Atman is not, I the Atman means I the body is not anything other than itself. So Vastu is the object. An object by itself is itself. It is not so many other things which are there other than it. Interestingly, when we say that it is Vastu Paricheda, this limitation doesn't apply to Atma. What does it mean? This is where Shankaracharya comes out and gives the definition of Advaita. Once you say that an object is itself, it is not million other things. Obviously, what it means is, if this limitation is not there, I am everything. Other than me, nothing else is there. For me to compare, to say that I am limited by the object, this is where Shankaracharya defines Advaita principle. Advaita, no second thing is existing. Because I am everything, there is no second thing. If it exists, then it is not the Advaita Atman that we are talking about. So, Desha Paricheda, Kala Paricheda, and Vastu Paricheda, if these three are not there, what will be the thing which is beyond these three? Where these three limitations are not applicable, becomes becomes the principle of Ananta. Ananta then becomes Brahman. Brahman is none other than me, the Atman. So this is the principles that we will be seeing laid out in the Bhagavad Gita in the next few verses. Because Krishna starts with the highest principles. People can get confused over this one. So what does Krishna teach in these 15-20 verses? If we understand the basic concepts of them, it becomes much easier for us to understand. It is now once we read the next few verses of Sankhya Yoga, we will come back to these concepts and quickly review and say that, okay, this is what it means in terms of what Krishna is trying to say. Yeah. So the first one that Krishna talks about will be, he defines Atma as aprameya. Prameya is the knowledge with which we can understand things. So, for example, even our senses becomes prameya. Means prama is measure. Measuring is prama. So prameya means I can measure. Measure what? If I see something, I can measure that particular object in terms of its characteristics. That is the measure. So when I talk about, when I hear something, I can measure the sound, the quality of the sound, whether the pleasantness of the sound, the decibel of the sound. We can measure the sound when it comes to the ears. Similarly, smell, if it is there, immediately I can say it is a pleasant smell which is there, or it is a particular type of smell that is coming. So you can measure through your senses, and this is what we do in terms of experiencing this entire world. When it comes to the Atma, what the Krishna will tell you with the same examples, you see that it becomes the aprameya. You cannot measure, means what? You cannot grasp this truth with your senses. It has to be a subtle understanding which comes beyond the senses. So the truth becomes aprameya. The Atma becomes aprameya. So it is beyond the senses. We use these terms as such. Yeah. It is like example what Dayanand Saraswati used to give every time is, it is like a photograph. When you see photograph, when you see, you will see what all things are there in front of you. Like our Guruji's photo in Lake Louise. You will see the snow, you will see the lake, you will see him smiling, and you may see in the original photograph maybe the other people who are standing in the nearby, the trees, the water, the lake, the color, everything you can see. But one thing you cannot see, but you know for certainty, is somebody who is there who is taking that photograph. Before the selfie world came, so we have this somebody else who is actually taking the photograph. And that particular person is never in the picture. Becomes aprameya when it comes to that. But one cannot deny the very presence of that particular person who is taking that photograph. So similarly, the knowledge that um, you may see the variations in front of you as a world, but one person who is definitely there, who make that possible, is the very principle of the Atman or the Ishvara. Ishvara is there everywhere, not visible. Cannot be heard, cannot be seen, cannot be smelled, cannot be touched. So all that cannot be is that particular Ishvara or the Atma Tattva which is there. So the first one we understand will be is aprameya. That truth is aprameya. That is that ever the experiencer, never the experienced. Yeah, ever the experiencer, never the experienced is aprameya. This quality Krishna will define. I have already told you about eternal principle. Once we say that it is kala parichedaha, paricheda atitaha, one who is beyond the limitation of the kala. So Krishna will describe now this Atman as the Nitya. Nitya principle, the eternal principle of existence is that Atman. This Krishna will again and again will tell you that Nitya. These terms you can either note down or remember as such. The third feature he reveals as far as this is concerned is Nirvikara. Means Vikara is not there. Again, go back to the moon principle. The moon changes over a period of time, 15 days, fortnight. The moon will go from being a full moon to no moon. New moon is no moon. No moon to full moon. Different stages it goes through. However, this changes. This is limited to the principle of inert layers. However, that particular concept which is illumining that moon is, there is no change in that. That remains exactly the same. Whether you are able to see no moon to a very small moon to half moon to the full moon, the principle of light remains exactly the same. However, the moon changes in front of you. Similarly, the body changes, your mind changes, different emotions come and go, but the concept illumining, the principle that is illumining these changes remains one and the same. So, nirvikara is the third feature. Aprameya, Nitya, and Nirvikara. These are the three we have seen. The fourth one, he will describe Atma as Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha, all pervading. When I say all pervading, I mentioned this, the limitation of desha is not there. Limitation of space is not there. So all pervading nature of that light, which illumines whatever object comes in front of it. So there may be billion, zillion beings in the universe, but every aspect of these, every one of them is illumined by the same principle of the consciousness principle, awareness principle, which is there beyond. Similar to the sunlight that is illumining whatever comes in front of it, so to say. Yeah. So this is called Sarvagataha, not limited by the desha. So the space limitation is not there, is how the Atman is described in the scriptures. Yeah. Based on this, there are two more principles that Krishna will ascribe to the Atman. He says that Atman is Akarta, and because it is Akarta, it becomes Abhokta. Same example we can take, or we can take any other example to understand this Akarta and Abhokta. Means, if suppose a space is there, you take the space example in terms of that. In the same space, you will have a person coming and doing a bhajan. Beautiful kirtan somebody is doing, we are all enjoying the, and then in the same space you will find somebody that person goes away and the space is just taken on rental. Second people come, is a cookery show, somebody will start cooking in that particular place. And if this goes away and somebody puts a bomb there and bomb goes up, so it doesn't matter what happens, space doesn't really uh, get involved with what is happening. It only allows for the things to happen. In fact, the definition of space in Sanskrit is one which allows things to happen. That's why Avakasha Pradatri Akasha. Space is defined as Akasha. Akasha is what? Avakasha Pradatri. It provides the provides space for things to happen. That is why it is called as Akasha. So, but it is not directly impacting, neither it is directly involved with whatever happens. Whatever happens, happens, but the space exists. That's why space is not impacted by the events that are happening within it. But without the space, those things cannot happen. Now extend that to the Atman principle. Anything that happens can happen only in the presence of that Atman. Unless that principle of awareness, sentiency is there, body cannot work. Body becomes, he went into coma, people say. Means what? Consciousness is not there in terms of ability to do action. But it is still there. We know the person is still alive in that sense. So the sentiency is there, but it is not able to act in terms of that. So the sentiency by itself cannot take any action. It requires the instruments for it to act. So body, mind, intellect, etc., the different panchakoshaha or whatever bodies that we are talking become instruments for action to happen. But really speaking, by itself, it cannot take action. So it becomes akarta. not only in terms of this, there are other aspects also, becomes akarta. Because these two are different. Verse 16 will make this pretty clear. When we come to verse 16, we will define as to what this variation between karta and akarta. There we will see what Krishna says is this particular Atman principle is an akarta, and because it is akarta, it automatically becomes abhokta. Means it cannot it cannot do things, neither it can enjoy things. Bhokta is one who enjoys the results of that action. So this particular person cannot be the one who does things, neither he is the one who actually enjoys the results of this particular action. But in the very presence of this Atma, things happen. That is the essence of this Atma Vidya. Krishna will discuss in the next few verses. Already started actually. He started in verse 12 describing this. How did he say? He will say that Arjuna's problem is that he will be the karta of killing his swajana, his near and dear, his gurus, his Mahanubhavas, whoever is there in front of him, he is going to kill in this war, and that is his problem. So, Krishna, it is very important to define Atma as this akarta and abhokta. You are not the killer, nor you will enjoy the results of that action of killing these people. That is how the Krishna he will define, because he is giving knowledge of the ultimate knowledge of Upanishads, but he will be giving that in terms of where Arjuna in front of him will continue to do the war. So the concepts will be same, but the way he gives them is slightly different, more on the ground. So instead of defining, he has done that. For example, in verse 12 now, we have seen Natvevaham Jatunasham Natvam Neme Janadipa Nachaivana Bhavishyamaha Sarve Vayamataparam. He didn't say that Atma is eternal. He is telling that there is no time when I was not there. There is no time when you are not there. There is no time when these kings are not there. And he says there will be no time where I will not be there. There is no time where you will not be there. There is no time when the kings will not be there. You are sure that you are there, I am there, and kings are there now in the present. So there is no time when all these people were not there. You are sure that they are now, and you are worried that you will be sending them away by death. So there won't be a time when none of the kings will be there. He is putting in terms where Arjuna understands with the immediate problem solution also should be given. So the truth is being given by Krishna, but again a hidden message comes in. Instead of telling that Atman is eternal, there is no time when Atma is not there. There is no time Atma will not be there, but he defines them in terms of me, you, and these kings. Because the problem is posed as me, you, and the kings. This is how the teaching is there in terms of verse 12. So in verse 12, what he is telling is that argument that he is giving is that this Atma is the eternal principle which is there. Any questions on this? Because this is pretty important in terms of our understanding of the next few verses. That it is, so the six things that we are talking about, one is aprameya. Aprameya means I am ever the experiencer, I am never the experienced. Means if I am experiencing something, no longer that is me, I am the very subject. I can never be the object. Aprameya. Very important concept that we need to understand of definition of Atma as per Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Second one he says is the Nitya. Nityatvam is the eternal principle, not in terms of Nityatvam, a relative Nityatvam. For example, for an ant which dies in 2 days or a mosquito which dies in a few minutes, the human life may appear to be infinite. But we all know life just like that goes even for a human being. So it is not a comparative Nityatvam. It is the real Nityatvam, the real eternal principle, which he defined in verse 12, defining the Atman, is the second principle of the Atman that he describes. Third one is the changeless feature. The objects that is there being experienced can be changing, ever changing, but that very principle that illumines these is the changeless principle. In fact, people who are traveling in a train in India, if they are not sitting near to the window and seeing the relative speeds of the train which is going and this one which is there, the train may appear as if it is not moving. You will observe this more when the train stops in a station and there is another train next to it, and our train starts. We think that actually the other fellow is going, or if the other train moves, I start thinking that my train is moving. Very, very clear in terms of this when we see that unless one person is stable, the relative motion is very difficult to grasp. So the very fact that the changes I am able to observe, whether it is in my mind, body, intellect, whatever I am looking at, that is because of the unchanging principle of I, which is standing and observing these changes right in front of it. So the vikaratvam which is there cannot be me. I can only be that unchanging principle of consciousness awareness principle, which makes me, I am able to observe. I am able to say, and he brings out in the next this one, Dehinosmin yada dehe kaumaram yavanam jara. So the person who actually changes from the childhood to the old age, the principle remained the same. And that is the very reason why I am able to observe these changes right in front of me in my own body, is how uh, take your mind also from ignorance to the knowledge. That is what teachers lead us in the schools to happen. But the principle that actually was ignorant before and the one which has gained the knowledge afterwards remains the same. So I cannot be this changing principle. I am the changeless observer is the third aspect of this Atman. Comes out with our own experience, really speaking, but unfortunately, we get carried away by the changing and I define myself. That is the reason why that superimposition, etc., the words come into picture. So this third feature is nirvikaraha. And the fourth one is sarvagataha. Everywhere. Limitation of desha is not there in front of me. That principle is me. Vastu paricheda, very, very important, that the principle of Advaita. I may think, okay, billion beings are there. There are billion different observers, billion different people who are not changing. We may think like that. Say sarvagataha. Don't think that way. That Atman, the principle remains exactly the same. Whatever comes in the purview, radar automatically gets lighted up, gets sentiency. So Sarvagataha is the fourth feature, and fifth and sixth they are together. That principle of Atman is Akarta and Abhokta. Neither the experiencer nor the enjoyer of the action. That is slightly different. This concept is slightly different in terms of directly understanding. We require to go through the particular verses when it comes to this. So these are the 6 principles that we will be reviewing, defined by Atman in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. So we will stop here and quickly go through the balance, because with this understanding, very, very easy for us to understand the next few verses of Bhagavad Gita where Atman is defined. Okay. Any questions anybody has?
Shankarji, you said that the consciousness doesn't have property like in our body or something. The body doesn't own consciousness. Would you say that?
Correct.
body doesn't own consciousness. Consciousness doesn't own body as well.
In a way, yes. If you say that sun owns the body of moon because we are defining as moonlight, really speaking, there is no direct connection that sun is thinking that it is doing. Neither it thinks that it owns the body of the moon. But experientially, it appears the body of the moon becomes a carrier in that sense.
So
So we may define that Atman is the one which owns the body, but it doesn't care. Akarta and Abhokta. Sorry, you have something else, Mohaniji.
I forgot now. So
Sorry.
anyway,
Sorry,
it
I have to
is lots of these Sanskrit words and all that need
correct.
to
Yeah.
be
I
thought
very,
about.
yeah, true. It's
I
very
have still
important because once we, sorry, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
little confusion that
Hmm,
we say consciousness illumines everything, and when there are little kids born and they come into this world, and some of them are born with lots of defects, like mental defect, brain not developed fully or not. They would you say consciousness is there? Would you say what would you say? The because we say principle of existence, then they are like any other object, right? But
correct.
why? See, the living thing is in them because they are moving. So, so they cannot do many things like normal, or some of them can't even verbalize what they are. Some of them don't even feel anything like mentally.
Hmm.
But I have seen a couple of babies or a couple of infants like that. So there I'm little bit in
So
this.
this can be answered, Mohinji, in many ways. Yeah, like I mentioned to you, one of the things when it comes to Atman is like a witnessing principle. It doesn't really have any favoritism. What it illumines, whatever comes in front of it, it illumines. Yeah. So the conscious principle is there. Whether that particular the one example we can take is for example, let us say there are different ponds, as an example only, different ponds with one is a dirty pond, one is a very clear, crystal clear water is there. The reflection of that may be different. This may be may explain to you. It doesn't mean that the original sun is different in these different water bodies. They're exactly the same. So a child who is fully having all functionalities of what we define as a human being, vis-a-vis what we are seeing in a particular child who is doesn't have all the qualities of what we think. Compared to Shankaracharya, other person may look, I may look like a mentally challenged person. If both of us stand next to each other, obviously that appears like that I am a mentally challenged person. But the consciousness, a principle, Shankaracharya says, is exactly the same. What is illumining his mind, what is illumining my mind and body, they are exactly the same principle. Otherwise, that whatever is happening in front of me, my functioning of my five senses and my mind, is principle remains the same. The equipment is different. That's all. So similarly, when
So
you say that, go ahead, please.
the the karma thing comes there.
So
Previous
there are
life.
two ways. There are two ways that you look at it. From the perspective of the creation, that's why it brings out all this karma theory and everything, etc. But what we are in is an Advaita class. So these karma principles are all okay when it comes to the universe, understanding of the universe. But remember, what we are trying to learn is there is nothing other than that truth principle. So whatever we are seeing other than that is only a mithya. Mithya means the elusive principle of a different order of reality. Maya belongs to a different order of reality compared to the Brahman. So you may think that this is happening. Really speaking, it is like a dream. Once you wake up from the dream, you don't give any reality, whether it is the same examples that you gave now in the waking world can happen in your own dream. And why that particular person, child who has born in my dream, doesn't have a couple of legs, or doesn't have one leg, or they cannot see, he can be a blind, etc., etc. But once I come into the waking state, all that doesn't have any relevance as far as my waking world is concerned. So similarly, once you wake up to that reality of Lord, all this becomes um, not really important in terms of this. So
But while we
understand from
are
both.
in, yeah,
Understand from
while
both
we
the
are in
approach.
this life, while
Hmm?
we are in this life, we have to think about
Correct,
these things.
correct. Agree with you, and that is where that is where the concept of karma, etc., are brought into picture as to how we overcome those things or deficiencies that we are experiencing. But when it comes to Advaita, what we are really looking at when we read Gita, it's a different text altogether as to understanding this entire concept of reality in a different light. Krishna also
Thank you.
comes in Bhagavad Gita, as I mentioned. He exposes this knowledge in three different ways. One, he says it in terms of philosophical angle. Bhagavad Gita is to understand the philosophical angle to a large extent. Many of the chapters, many of the examples, many of the teachings are from philosophical angle. But there is an angle of dharma also he brings in. There is also a angle of laukika, that is the logic that he brings in. He explains the same concepts in all the three. In fact, even philosophy, the way he explains is using the logic. Like he did in verse 12, as I mentioned. He's not telling that Atma is eternal. He says that you are eternal, these kings are eternal. We will see all the three, but Bhagavad Gita is only philosophical text. We are not really teaching the dharma through this particular text.
There is a good connection between consciousness and the body. If there is no body, there won't be any consciousness.
Other way around. Other way around is what Krishna is telling. You can't say
Okay.
because there is no body, there is no consciousness. No, because there is consciousness, there is body.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Shankarji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.